My name is Kofman. I'm here today to talk about a book that has meant lots and lots to me, both on artistic and on personal level. The book is called Autobiography of a Faith. It's a memoir by an American poet and essayist, Lucy Greeley. This book was first published in 1994 during the time when there was a big boom in memoirs and lots of personal stories came out. Today, 2020, most of those books are forgotten, but Lucy Greeley's work became a classic. In this book, Lucy Greeley recounts the story of her life in aftermath of a surgery for cancer of her jaw. So she got sick with cancer when she was 8 years old, and surgeons removed one of the bones in her face and left her with quite serious facial disfigurement. And so in her memoir, Lucy takes us through her life as a child and a young woman living in a world that expects physical perfection, or at least physical normativity of its people, especially women. And she looks with great candor and real vividness at what it was like for her to live with the face she had. She describes really tough experiences of being bullied, whether it's at school or increasingly as she grew older on the streets by strangers. People would think nothing of yelling things like dog or stuff like this in her face. But it's not all very gloomy. The book also recounts her becoming a poet, the escape and the beauty that the words offered her. It also heartbreakingly talks about her search for love. It was always difficult because of her appearance. And one of the things I really love about this book is how much she doesn't pussyfoot around and she names things as they are. This is one of the reasons why the book is important to me so much on a personal level, because as some of you may know, myself, I grew up with a lot of scars on my body. But I also always felt that, and I always felt like, I was failing because the social messages were that, a woman has to look good or at least presentable. And it was almost like it was my personal failure that I didn't adhere to it. But on the other hand, there was the feminist messages too, that I should not worry about my body. I should accept myself as I am and not to grieve. And here comes Lucy Greeley, and her book tells me, well, actually, it's okay to feel not okay about how you are. It's okay to be upset and to experience the loss of your body. It's not only what she says, but it's also how Lucy Greeley says. She writes very reflectively. This book is very philosophical. It's poetic, it's evocative, but it's also very philosophical. Through her own story, she really looks at what it means to be a woman, what it means to have a body, what it means to have a body that gets noticed wherever you go when you cannot fade into the background. This candor of Lucy Greeley, where she doesn't try to prettify things, when she doesn't try to portray reality as it should be, what it really happens to her, it's also really evident in the way she ends the story. One of the reasons some memoirs don't work for me is I feel there's a sort of strong trend at the moment of conformity in how we end our stories. So when we tell difficult stories of hardship, we always have to kind of at the end imply, at least that's what the public and the publishers often expect. We have to imply at the end that no matter how difficult the stuff we went through was, at the end we found some kind of redemption. The suffering was worth it. It taught us some lessons. We became good people. And sometimes this happens. Sometimes it's true. And I'm all for optimistic stories. But sometimes it doesn't. And I really love the strength of Lucy Greeley in her book, where she actually says that she ends on a note of glimmer of hope. Things are getting a little bit easier for her. But still, there's so much tough stuff that is ahead of her. She was only in her late 20s when she wrote this book. And there's a really wonderful, much more mature in age wisdom in this book. And it kind of makes it really poignant for me, because she actually died in her late 30s. And it almost feels like she wrote this book. It's almost like she was burning. She kind of almost like she knew that she didn't have long to live. And she tried to squeeze everything she could out of life, which is how she lived as well, but also out of her own writing. If you read this book and you find it enjoyable, I just want to very quickly recommend one more book, which is a companion memoir, as I see, to Lucy Greeley's book. It's written by the American author Anne Patchett, who was one of Lucy's closest friends. It's called Truth and Beauty. And in this, she wrote this book after Lucy's death as part of coping with her grief and loss. And she gives another perspective to Lucy's story. But her philosophy, her sort of conclusions, the point she makes about how important it is to admit what life is like rather than sort of try to present life as it should be is so important. They both sort of really, both these writers share this very important to me literary ethical just generally motto. So I hope you'll enjoy these books, and thank you for listening to me.